I was 10 when I first noticed the empty chairs. At the regional spelling bee, 2 seats in the front row stayed untouched. The metal around my neck felt heavy, colder than the metal should. The audience clapped, and I smiled for them instead of my parents. Later that night, I overheard my mother laughing on the phone. She was incredible, she said, but not about me. It was about my younger sister and her dance recital. I sat on the stairs, clutching the ribbon I'd won hours before. The laughter from the living room drowned out my quiet breathing. That night, I promised myself to study harder, to make them notice. In middle school, I brought home report cards filled with perfect scores. My father skimmed them, then asked if I'd seen Mai's new trophy. "It's for teamwork," he said proudly, like it meant more than effort. By high school, I had learned to stop expecting applause. Still, I kept chasing it, thinking one day they might turn their heads. When I won the journalism contest, no one came to the ceremony. My teacher, Ms. Tran, clapped from the back, smiling with quiet pity. Afterward, she offered to take my picture with her phone. It was the only photo I had from that night. At home, the dining table was filled with decorations for Mai's showcase. Mom asked if I could help paint a banner for her performance. I said yes, pretending the ache in my chest didn't exist. The banner said, "Shine bright, our star." No one noticed how the paint dripped like tears on my hands. Each year, the distance grew thicker, a wall made of invisible choices. Mai became the golden child, and I became the shadow beside her. When they drove her to competitions across the country, I stayed behind. The house was quiet, except for the hum of my laptop. I filled scholarship forms with careful pen strokes and no parent signature. In every application essay, I wrote about perseverance and independence. But what I meant was loneliness. They called sometimes, voices bright with excitement about Mai's wins. "Your sister's team made nationals," my father once said. He didn't ask about my exam that same day. I learned to measure love by silence, pride by absence. Sometimes I stared at family photos, lined on the hallway shelf. In each frame, Mai glowed at the center, my parents leaning close. I was there too, blurred in motion or cropped at the edge. That invisibility seeped into everything I did. It was in the way I spoke softly, afraid of taking space. In the way I smiled even when it hurt. By senior year, I stopped inviting them to events altogether. It was easier to expect nothing than to feel that hollow hope. But still, a small part of me waited. Waited for one day they might look up and see me. The empty chairs had followed me from childhood to college. Every achievement came with their absence attached. Every victory echoed louder in the quiet. And even when I swore I didn't care anymore, I still did. The day I received the invitation printouts, my hands shook slightly. Thick cream paper, gold lettering, elegant enough for something that mattered. I wrote each name carefully, letting the ink dry slow and deliberate. The last envelope bore my parents' names. It felt heavier than the others, like it carried 4 years of silence. I decided to deliver it myself. Mai offered to come, but I told her it was personal. The drive to my parents' suburb felt longer than usual. Every familiar street looked distant, coated with old memories. When I rang the bell, my mother opened the door in workout clothes. Her surprise flickered before she smiled too brightly. "Lynn, what a surprise. You should have called first." I held out the envelope, my voice steady. "I wanted to give this in person. I'm valedictorian." Her eyes widened, and she called for my father. He appeared behind her, checking his watch mid-sentence. "That's wonderful, honey. When's the ceremony?" "Next month," I said, forcing a small smile. "There's a reserved section for valedictorian families." They exchanged glances that said everything words didn't. "Of course, we'll be there," my mother replied quickly. Her tone was light, casual, too practiced to be sincere. "It would mean a lot to me," I said quietly. My father nodded, without looking up from his phone. "Let me check something," he murmured, fingers moving fast. Mai has a cheer recruitment weekend around then, right? They shared another silent glance, the kind that always excluded me. My throat tightened, but I didn't let it show. I hope you can make it, I said, forcing calmness. We'll make it work, my mother promised again, with that same brightness. On the drive home, my friend Nam sat in silence beside me. He didn't ask how it went, just offered his hand. I gripped the steering wheel until my palms ached. That night, I rehearsed the moment in my head 100 times. Maybe they meant it this time. Maybe they'd show up. 3 days before graduation, my phone rang with Dad's name. Hope sparked, fragile but real. Hey, Dad, I answered, trying to sound casual. Lynn, he began, voice flat. We've been so busy with Mai's visits. My stomach turned cold. We're exhausted, sweetheart. It's just too much to travel right now. The words fell like stones. I understand, I whispered, though my chest burned. That's my girl, he said, relieved. We'll watch the live stream. After he hung up, the silence screamed louder than ever. The next morning, I scrolled through social media while waiting for coffee. There it was. A photo of my parents and Mai, smiling at a fancy restaurant. The caption read, Family spa day before a big weekend, self-care. The timestamp matched the exact time of Dad's call. I stared at it until the image blurred. This wasn't exhaustion, it was choice. They had chosen her again. And in that moment, something inside me cracked quietly. Not with rage, but with clarity. Their absence had never been accidental. It had always been deliberate. I closed the app, locked my phone, and sat in the stillness. For the first time, I stopped hoping they would come. Instead, I started wondering what I would say if they didn't. The night after the call, I couldn't sleep. The city outside my window hummed, but inside, everything was still. I sat on the floor surrounded by open photo albums. Every image told the same story in different years. Mai smiling in the center. My parents' arms wrapped around her shoulders. And me, half visible at the edge or missing entirely. I traced the photos with my fingertips, counting absences like years. Each one felt heavier than the last. I didn't cry. The tears had long since dried somewhere inside me. When the sun rose, I was still sitting there, hollow but awake. That afternoon, Nam knocked on my door with coffee. He looked at the mess on the floor, then at my face. You don't have to pretend anymore, he said softly. Had joined later, arms crossed, eyes fierce but kind. You've spent years trying to earn what should have been given, she said. Her words landed deeper than she knew. I wanted to argue, but no sound came out. They stayed with me until evening, quiet company against the ache. When they left, I opened my laptop and stared at my graduation speech. 2 files sat on the screen side by side. The first one, safe version, filled with polished gratitude. The second, truth version, raw and unfinished. I read the first line of the safe one again. I owe everything to my supportive family. The lie stung more than it ever had before. I deleted the sentence and closed the file. Then I opened the other draft and began typing. Words poured out faster than I could think. About invisibility, about silence mistaken for peace, about loving people who never looked back. Every keystroke felt like breathing for the first time. When I finished, my hands trembled, but my chest felt lighter. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. Later, Ha called to check in. You sound different, she said. I think I'm done begging for love, I answered quietly. There was a pause, then her soft laugh. Good, about time. That night, I printed both versions of the speech and placed them on my desk. One clean and polite. One messy and alive. I stared at them until my eyes blurred. Which version would the world expect? Which version would finally set me free? Daniel once told me that truth costs something. Maybe this was the price. At dawn, I folded the honest speech and slipped it into my bag. I didn't know if I would read it, but I needed it close. The mirror reflected a face I barely recognized. Not broken, just tired of hiding. When I stepped outside, the morning air felt different. The weight on my chest had shifted into resolve. Whatever happened at that ceremony, I would no longer stay invisible. They could ignore me, but they couldn't erase me anymore. The morning of graduation was bright and cruelly perfect. Sunlight poured through my dorm window, too gentle for what I felt. My gown hung on the closet door like a challenge I had to face. Half-fastened the pendant she'd given me around my neck. The words engraved shimmered faintly. "Your truth matters." Her smile was small but certain. "Whichever speech you choose, I'll be there," she said. Nam handed me coffee and his quiet reassurance. "You've already done the hardest part," he whispered. Outside, the campus buzzed with celebration and flashing cameras. Laughter echoed across the courtyard, but none of it felt like mine. In the preparation room, I sat alone with two papers before me. The safe one looked neat, perfect, and lifeless. The honest one was crumpled, smudged with ink and courage. My phone buzzed on the table. A new post from my parents appeared. "Proud of Mai for earning her summer internship. #family love." 30 minutes before my ceremony. I stared at the screen until my heartbeat slowed. Then I tore the safe speech in half. The sound was sharp, final, liberating. I folded the honest one into my robe pocket. When my name was called, I walked to the stage. Each step echoed louder than applause. 3 empty chairs sat in the front row, shining under the lights. The sign on them read, "Nguyen Family." I met their emptiness head-on. At the podium, I took a breath that reached the bottom of my lungs. "Distinguished guests and fellow graduates," I began. My voice was calm, steady, almost too clear. "Today, I want to talk about being invisible in plain sight." A ripple passed through the audience. "This moment should be about gratitude," I continued. "But sometimes gratitude means telling the truth." My phone vibrated again, lighting up with a message from my mother. "Couldn't you just thank us like everyone else?" Without hesitation, I lifted the phone so the audience could see. "This," I said, "is what I received instead of their presence today." Gasps scattered through the hall. Not pity, recognition. I continued, voice unwavering now. "We're told to stay silent, to keep peace, to be good children. But silence is not peace, it's surrender." Behind me, the projection screen flashed unexpectedly. Someone had mirrored my parents' recent post. Laughter and disbelief rippled across the crowd. I looked straight into the camera at the back of the room. For years, I measured my worth by who didn't show up. Today, I stopped doing that. I am seen, even if not by them. The final line left my lips before I realized I was crying. Not from pain, but from release. The hall erupted into applause that felt like thunder. The university president approached, shaking my hand firmly. "Thank you for reminding us what courage looks like," he said. I stepped off the stage, heart trembling but light. For once, I didn't look toward the empty chairs. I looked ahead, where the light finally felt like it was mine. 2 hours after the ceremony, there was a knock on my door. I knew the rhythm before I even opened it. Mai stood there, arms crossed, eyes sharp and uncertain. "You embarrassed them," she said before I could speak. "Everyone's talking about your speech. Mom's furious." I stepped aside and let her in without a word. She paced the room, clutching her phone like a weapon. "Dad hasn't stopped calling me. They said you went too far." I sat down on the edge of my bed. "Did they send you to fix it for them?" I asked quietly. She froze, caught off guard. "They thought you'd listen to me," she admitted. "Just post an apology. Say you were emotional." Her voice softened, pleading now. "If you do, they'll help pay for your graduate school." I almost laughed. "I already have a scholarship," I said. "I don't need their money." She blinked, confusion flashing across her face. You're really not going to apologize? No, I said simply, not for telling the truth. I reached under my desk and pulled out an old leather notebook. I placed it in her hands. Look through it, I said. It's all there. She flipped the pages slowly. Each line marked a moment. Every award, every ceremony, every absence. In the column labeled Parents Attended, most boxes were empty. 42 events, 9 check marks. She stopped reading halfway through. What is this supposed to prove? She whispered. That you were the favorite, or that I was forgotten. That it's not jealousy, I said. It's reality. The words hung between us like a thin thread. Her shoulders slumped as she stared at the page again. I never knew you kept track, she said softly. You never had to, I replied. You already had their attention. Silence stretched, fragile but honest. She sat beside me, setting the notebook on her lap. I didn't ask to be the favorite, she said finally. I know, I answered, but I paid for it. Her phone buzzed again. Mom calling, Dad texting. My hesitated, then answered. Hi, Mom, she said. No, I'm with Lynn. Her voice steadied mid-sentence. Actually, Mom, I think you should listen to her for once. I looked at her, surprised. She met my eyes and gave a small, uncertain smile. When she hung up, she looked younger somehow. They want a family meeting tomorrow, she said quietly. Dad sounded serious. Can I stay here tonight? I nodded, feeling a strange mix of calm and ache. There's space on the couch, I said. She smiled faintly. Thanks, sis. As she settled in, the room felt different. Not healed, not fixed, but lighter. For the first time, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like a beginning. 3 months later, the city outside my window hummed with summer light. New York moved fast, but for once I kept up. My apartment was small, but filled with warmth and purpose. On the wall hung framed articles with my name beneath the title. Each byline felt like proof I had built something of my own. No empty chairs, no missing faces. Just stories that belonged entirely to me. Every morning, I brewed coffee and opened my laptop to write. The quiet didn't hurt anymore. It sounded like peace. Sometimes I called in the evenings, her voice softer now. She told me about university, about trying to find her own voice. She didn't apologize much, but she listened. That was enough. One morning, I received a package in the mail. Inside was a letter in my father's handwriting. The paper smelled faintly of dust and regret. I gave up writing when I was young, he wrote. Watching you succeed reminded me of the part of me I buried. It doesn't excuse my absence, but I understand now. Behind the letter were photographs I had never seen. Me at 5, smiling with missing teeth. Me at 7, holding a school award. Tiny proofs that at some point I had been seen. Another envelope held a short note from my mother. I kept these hidden, I'm sorry. I folded both letters gently and placed them in my drawer. Not forgiveness. Not rejection. Just a space for truth to rest. That afternoon, I met Nam and Hao at our favorite cafe. They had moved to the city recently, chasing dreams of their own. We sat by the window, sunlight cutting through steam and laughter. Nam raised his cup. To the girl who stopped asking to be seen, he said. Hess smiled. To the woman who finally saw herself. Our cups clinked softly, the sound clear and whole. That night, I received an email from my old university. An invitation to return as a guest speaker. Topic, truth and personal narrative. 6 months ago, that message would have broken me open. Now, I read it with quiet certainty. I clicked accept. The calendar on my desk was filled with deadlines and travel plans. No red excess marking disappointment. No anxious notes reminding me to call home for approval. Only goals, projects, possibilities. Before bed, I checked my phone. A message from my blinked at the top of the screen. My professor loved my essay about family. I mentioned your speech. For once, I didn't feel the need to reply right away. I smiled, turned off the light, and lay still. Outside, sirens echoed faintly, blending with the hum of the city. I thought about how healing wasn't loud. It was quiet, steady, sometimes unseen. It was waking up one day and realizing you no longer need permission. And as sleep pulled me under, one thought lingered. They may never have seen me. But now, finally, I did. The autumn sun returned, softer than before. Light spilled through the window, touching every corner of my new life. I set my pen down beside the latest article I'd written. Outside, the city pulsed with noise, but inside there was calm. Ha and Nam arrived with takeout and laughter that filled the room. We ate on the floor, glasses raised high. To choosing ourselves, Ha said, eyes bright. To building families that see us, Nam added. I smiled, feeling warmth bloom where ache once lived. For years, I'd chased love through silence and empty seats. Now I understood something simple and whole. Love doesn't have to be earned by suffering. It can be chosen, built, and shared freely. Later, when the door closed and night settled in, I stood by the window. The city lights flickered like 1,000 small beginnings. On my desk lay my father's letter, unopened again but lighter now. I whispered a quiet thank you to the girl I used to be. She had waited for permission to exist. I no longer did. Outside, a new season was beginning. And this time, I was ready to walk into it without looking back.